keen insight into what type of landlord the Prince of Wales is.
And Harry Spencer continues to betray his father and his family. Welcome to Heirs and Spares, the show that dives into the fascinating world of two of the most recognized royal couples on both sides of the Atlantic. One more royal than the other, we should stress, that being Prince William. I'm Kinsey Schofield, and I'll be bringing you updates on Prince Harry and Meghan Markle right here in California.
And it's my usual role to bring you all the news about the Prince and Princess of Wales. Been a bit quiet on that front, but they've still been grabbing the headlines here and there.
What's your name?
Oh, I always forget. My name is Rupert Bell. Sorry, we get there in the end. But keep.
I love it.
Let's begin with a blooper. Surely people know I'm called Rupert Bell by now. I've been doing this now for over a year. But anyway, sorry.
You're like Madonna and Cher, but you're just there. We don't even need a name for you. Right. Well, hey, let's talk. It has been quiet on the William and Catherine front, but a really interesting piece from the Telegraph. I met with a royal author over the week, and one of the first things she said to me was, "Did you see the Prince William Telegraph piece?" And I was like, "Yes." But I also have seen some criticism on it. Why don't you fill me in first with some of your favorite parts of our highlights from the Telegraph piece, or anything that stood out to you? And then let's debate some of the criticism around it, if you don't mind.
Well, this is an interesting one because obviously the Duchy of Cornwall is what we're referring to. Now, it's something that he took over when his father became king, because prior to that, he had been in charge of Duchy of Cornwall. It seems to be something that was started back in the 14th century, 1337 to be precise, and it has basically evolved as a means for the future king heir to sort of generate income. Now, it's a huge empire of length and breadth of the country with some fairly quirky things that come under the Duchy of Cornwall umbrella. And like the Scilly Isles, just off the west coast of England, beautiful location, a test match cricket ground, which for those who watch in America, it's a cricket ground in London called the Kennington Oval. And he's a landlord of parts in rural and urban Britain, stretching over 20 counties. I think he comes under something like 128,494 acres he owns, and it generates a profit last year of over 26 million. Now, the article that you referred to is him a day on the farm, basically going out and about and meeting the people who work for the Duchy of Cornwall. It covers a wide range of businesses, farms, you name it. And it obviously, we're getting a sense, and from that article, that it's something that the Prince of Wales is desperate to see moving forward and carry on the good work his father did, but then give it his personal touch, and wanting to make sure that it is fit for purpose and avoids some of the headlines that it attracts. Now, the areas that it can get controversial is when he inherited it, he didn't pay any inheritance tax. Now, that is a bit of a hot potato here at the moment. Also, it's not disclosed how much income tax he pays, but the idea of the Duchy of Cornwall is to pay for his royal household and indeed to make sure it is a viable concern. But you can see where the areas of controversy could develop.
So one of the comments I saw online was around Prince William's private visits to the duchy once every 4 to 6 weeks. It says that he works his way through the farms and offices to meet families and staff, shake hands, and quiz them on what he can do to help. His visits are usually private, it says, rarely making the court circular, and kept quiet by loyal locals who are used to royals coming and going. Now, the criticism I saw was he's only there every 4 to 6 weeks, basically discouraging him, or being discouraging about him, saying he should invest more time in it. When is this guy supposed to do all of the other things we actually hear about. These are secret visits. These are under the radar. And he has had a very busy schedule, surprisingly busy schedule, in my opinion, since 2024.
I think, look, it's a huge organization. I think when it means the visits, but I do think he does spend a lot of time in the office and outside the visits, being sort of a degree of hands-on to his position as the Duchy of Cornwall. Look, he's relatively new to the position, so presumably he's learning all the time about some of the more quirky businesses that come under the Duchy of Cornwall's situation. So it is a complicated one, and that's why I think arranging visits is not easy in the royal family. But I think it's important that he must be seen to be hands-on. And it clearly, from this article, you got the sense that when he does turn up, people are more than happy to see him. Although someone did say, well, anything I can do to improve? To which someone said, well, you can let me live rent-free. To which he sort of probably went, oh, I'm not sure the bean counters within the Duchy of Cornwall will be too pleased with that. But you can see that there are areas with the kind of money that it's generating. But there are some interesting things that he is developing, particularly around trying to help the rural poor within Cornwall and places. And it is a problem in this country. People think it's only in an urban environment. But, I live in a rural community. Yes, it may be all picture postcard, but it can be pretty tough for a lot of people. Housing can be expensive. There's all kinds of issues. And the important thing is with his homelessness project, what drives the Prince of Wales. And it is trying to make sure that whatever he's involved with, and we've talked about it before on this programme, that actually something positive comes out of it. And that was the really overriding sense of this article in the Telegraph, that he's not just a token boss. He wants to be, as much as his situation allows him to be, a hands-on boss that does actually make an impact. And the Duchy of Cornwall can be seen to be a force for good.
Yeah, you're right. I love the line. He wants to use it as another branch of his philanthropy. He tells me existing for social impact versus an old style financial resource to be drawn from. So I don't understand why anyone would be ugly about this. It seems like he saw an opportunity, a unique opportunity, and took it when it comes to that. He had a vision of what this could be and how he could change the way that it functions.
Look, it's probably a bit like trying to steer a tanker. It won't be easy. It's a huge, as I mentioned, organization with things dotted the length and breadth of the country. But what I think he has to do, and this is the navigating the sort of political scenario, and people saying, look, why does he own 128,000 acres of land? What's he doing? And there are bits of water that he owns and he gets rent from that. So it's all a bit quirky, but it's been passed down from generation to generations. And there is, every time the financial figures are published, there will be a degree of criticism saying, well, clearly, why is he not paying as much tax as the next person who's made a profit? Because, being a rural community, it's tough to make money, and farmers are struggling to make money here. So there will be a lot of political sensitivities around the Duchy of Cornwall and the money it makes. But as I say, he doesn't draw a grant from the state. His household and everything is run from the income that is derived from the Duchy of Cornwall, which, so it's a historical thing, and obviously helps run his household and all that involves. But obviously 26 million is still a lot of money. But that's why I think he wants to make sure that any money is made is then reinvested to a good effect. And I think that's his primary function and what he wants to make sure does happen. His father tried it and was doing it. It's now William, who you see picking up the father's mantle, whether it be on environmental issues or other issues, wants to carry that torch further and maybe push the boundaries a little bit more.
And I just want to stress, because I've seen people angry when we talk about this, Prince William and the Duchy of, before. The show's called Heirs and Spares. We're talking about the heir. I acknowledge that King Charles has done wonderful things and did wonderful things when it came to the duchy. I acknowledge that King Charles has been incredible in his own spaces. When you look at the King's Trust, which used to be the Prince's Trust, and all of these things, the King's Foundation, I completely acknowledge that. We're not trying to put down the king by talking up Prince William. So sometimes I feel like that's misinterpreted. This is called Heirs and Spares.
Well, no, but where we have to look at it and say is that the monarchy evolves, so the baton is handed on. That's the whole point of what the Duchy of Cornwall is about. And actually, it's a good grounding because I'm sure that over the years there were previous incumbents managing it who were, probably very not good with their attention to detail. But for the Prince of Wales, he cannot afford not to be seen to be a good landlord in this case, because the people will circle.
Yeah.
So it is very important that he does actually make it something that people wherever the Duchy of Cornwall are involved can see the benefit. And it's not just, oh God, they're just hoovering up the rent and not doing anything with it. So I think there is a very important PR side to be played by the Prince of Wales. But it's got, in a way, this is the way our monarchy works. Things get passed on, from generation to generation. That's the way our constitution works. And this is, as I say, an historical title that dates back to the early 14th century. So it's just one of those things that makes our history and our constitution a bit different from most.
And we can look forward to seeing Prince George walk the same path through the same farms, having some similar conversations in the not too near future as well, because he will inevitably inherit that. Let's discuss Prince George and Prince Louis and Princess Charlotte, because we do have something to look forward to when it comes to the Wales children and Prince William and Catherine. We expect to see them at Trooping the Colour next weekend. And Prince Louis typically gives us our money's worth with the shows, facial expressions, attitude. He really is the superstar when it comes to this stuff.
As a military man, I'll create King's Birthday Parade. That's what it's officially got. The regiment troops the colour, but that's the sort of commercial name that everyone understands. But it's the King's Birthday Parade. It's not his birthday, but that's what it's designed ultimately. They have 3 rehearsals prior to it. I think you're in London during that time. I don't know whether have you been to it before?
Yeah, I love going.
And so, but it is a great sight. And yes, and then they have the fly past, and and we do get a chance to see members of the royal family at various stages. And it's an important part of the summer tradition, part of the summer season, because we are entering that phase now. And yes, it will be an opportunity to see the 3 children. Louis, no doubt, looking up at the red arrows. I was lucky enough in my garden the other day, and I got a free show. They flew past me on the way to something. It's spectacular. So I was a bit like Louis, wow, looking up at the red arrows as they flew over my garden. But for Louis, we know it's part of his shtick now to be the cheeky chappy, whether it be on the balcony or somewhere. And but I'm sure he'll enjoy it, because I read somewhere that someone was saying that even at the Jubilee celebrations for the late Queen, the last one, they were talking about the red arrows and the fly past, because it is something that is spectacular. But also the pageantry of the birthday parade is important as well. So we will get a chance to see them. And as I say, it's been quiet on the family front this week, because obviously it was half term last week in this country. And as we know, the royal family the Prince and Princess of Wales take a view that during holidays, they try and be much around as much as is possible, given their various commitments.
Well, and calendar wise, that probably strengthened King Charles's trip to Canada when it came to coverage, because people had an entire week that they could really analyze and break that down. I heard nothing but positive things when it came to the King's trip to Canada. And typically, if we would have seen a beautiful picture of Catherine, the Princess of Wales, or Prince Louis doing a cartwheel out in a field, that would have dominated the headlines.
I think it was a very important. I know we're heirs and spares,
Yeah.
but actually, it's very important going forward that the king fulfilled his constitutional duty, and it's something that William will see his father doing, and will have to learn from that. And as we know, it was quite a sensitive political one this time because of what's going on in your country and your president and everything that was going on behind the scenes. And I thought the king actually navigated very well and showed the people of Canada believe in the monarchy still and the importance of it. And that stand back bit actually gave it a chance for it to be a sort of a rallying call to Canadians, but without going over the top. And I think that's a very good message. And presumably the Prince of Wales was looking on with interest because it wasn't an easy trip. I mean, he was in and out in 48 hours. You've got to give him credit for a man who's still recovering from cancer, that he did it so well. But actually, it's a very good lesson of the state of the monarchy. And obviously for Prince William, he knows his father is trying to just make sure it's a steady as you go monarchy, because as you know, he obviously with him being in the 70s, it may be unlikely that he lives as long as his mother did and another 20 odd years. So it's obviously food for thought. But I thought the king navigated it well.
I was just on the phone with my dad and we were talking about Prince Harry, last name Spencer. We'll go into the details a little bit later about Harry wanting to change his last name to Spencer. But my dad even said to me, and the king has cancer. How cruel. I think we forget he has cancer because he does jump on a plane for 20 and goes to Canada for 24 hours. He truly, you see so much of his mother in the way he has become king. He is a completely selfless, in my opinion, sovereign. Like to watch the way that he has navigated this and continued to work so fiercely is really admirable.
And I think that's the important thing, and that's what he wanted to see. He was a long time in the waiting to get the job, if you see what I mean. And I don't mean that in a cruel way, but let's be honest, he gets the job through sadness, the loss of his mother, in this case. So he gets the job, he takes it on, and he's by then already in his 70s, and he's then gets clobbered with cancer. That really stops him in his tracks. But he's a man determined to try and make the best of, as he would say, of however long he is. God will spare him. Allow him to be king of this country. And I think it's the selfless side of it is such an important part of being in the royal family. You are serving the country, and you have to understand that is what you have to do. Now, we know certain elements of the family didn't want to do that,
Right.
and saw that as a not the point. And yes, it must at times feel very frustrating. You and I can go and decide what we want to do. No one's telling us that we have to go and do that. When you are the future king, in William's case, you have no choice. He can't suddenly say, "I want to go and do something else, and I don't want to be king." That's just not. He can't do that. Well,
And
I suppose
he seems to believe that his position is a blessing. Well, I mean, that's what it comes off. To me, he seems to acknowledge that he lucked out when it came to his DNA, whereas Prince Harry's like, they're in prison. My brother and my father are
yeah,
stuck. It's like, then why won't you give up your
yeah.
title? Then why do you insist on your association with them if they're so stuck?
Well, they've got no choice. Of course, they're stuck. That, unfortunately, from 1066 and before that, that's the way our monarchies worked. It is an inherited system and has been forever and a day. Okay, it's got a bit, there's a bit coming from over there and everything. It's not but in essence, if you're the next in line to the throne, that's your job. But it comes with a burden. I think what's interesting, I do think William, he's had to sort of suddenly step up to the plate. And it is because he's now got to get ready. And obviously, though, he's had to deal with the double whammy of his father being diagnosed, his wife being diagnosed and recovering, but looking as if she's in a much better place than she has been. We don't know for sure, but certainly on the evidence, she's when she's out and about, she looks if you wouldn't know. So that's all good. But actually, we just got to see William, and that's why we go back to this article, the Duchy of Cornwall. You know, there's a PR story behind it.
Yes.
It's a good story,
Yes.
but it's actually important that he get the story out there about what the Duchy of Cornwall is about, to try and fend off the naysayers, the doubters, and think it. So it was important, and to see that William is just not a cursory member. He's as much involved in that as in any of the other projects, and bringing in some of the other things he do, whether it be being environmentally aware with all the stuff they're doing, whether it be helping out homeless projects. He can marry that everything together. He's got a shop window to do some of the things that he wants through the Duchy of Cornwall.
And seeing the transparency, I think, is something that the 11 people that now work for Harry and Meghan, their new Timu Royal Court, the transparency.
No, their office. It's not a royal court, Kinsey. I told you last week, it's just an office.
Well,
okay?
I call it the Timu Royal Court because Timu is a website where you can get a pair of pants for like $1 because it's cheap and it's going to fall apart within 24 hours. But I think that it's also transparency. There's something that brings you a little bit of comfort in getting some background on the process that we didn't quite understand in the Telegraph article before, or just elaborating on things that we weren't privy to. And then the idea of seeing what his ultimate objective is, then painting that picture. And I was very critical of the Fast Company profile on Meghan. I see there are moments in that where she's almost too honest, where she's like, I don't know what we're going to do until 2026, or will there be a second podcast? There's interest. Second season of the podcast, there's interest. People are approaching her, but there is no big ultimate goal. And when you can't paint that picture for people, they are going to lose confidence in you. And William did the opposite in this piece. He painted that picture for people.
Oh yeah, and it was and I think that was extremely important because that is his, it's not his primary function, but it is a very important part of his daily working life, and it's very important because he does it private. At least opening up a shop window into it, and getting a glimpse of what it's about. I was equally interested in some of the facts that came out about the Duchy of Cornwall. I didn't to think it's that large. It's a huge sort of industry in itself. If you're making 23.6 million profit, yeah, there's a lot of money. It's a big turnover. And so I think, okay, it's well managed. He's not there sitting in the office every day running it, but he is definitely interested. And you see that with most things he's doing. He's not one who just looks and feigns interest. I think he genuinely wants to make sure that he can be and open doors and be a force for good.
Yeah, that is so sweet. I mentioned Meghan's podcast, and you took one for the team, Rupert. You listened to her second to last episode. We've got a new episode premiering on Tuesday with Beyonce's mom, because I guess she's going to teach us how to be a momager, how Meghan could, put Lily to work as a pop star, perhaps. Talk to me about the Spanx / New Heels episode of Meghan's podcast with the Spanx founder. Were you moved? Are you also going to design unique undergarments after listening?
No, I'm not going to do that, but I was impressed by the lady because clearly she's a very astute, hardworking, bright, intuitive. I think wouldn't that be intuitive? I think because to come up with that product.
If she was that intuitive, she'd run like hell from Meghan Markle. But continue.
Well, okay, no, well, there may be some character issues at stake here, but you can't fault her business acumen.
Yes,
I don't know what the undergarment is like to wear. So,
well, I can tell you that I can tell you from experience that it's not the best on the market anymore.
Things evolve, and that's why she's moved on. That's why she's moved on. She sold it, didn't she? So it doesn't matter. She's made the money. That's what you do. Get out, and someone else takes it over, and then they don't quite have the drive. That's fairly normal. And then she starts up the shoe empire, which again, have you worn these stilettos? I don't know. Right, okay. I
I've
was
been wearing naturalizers, which I think are for older ladies. I have been wearing
uh,
them since I was like 15 years old. Keep my high
natural.
heels low, is all I have to say. I am not about those high heels.
Yeah, I know. You got me back on fashion,
I
and you
know,
know it's not my
this is
strong
what we live
spot.
for
Anyway,
here.
however, I was. It's been lovely weather over here, so I've been out in my garden every quite a lot, tending to my courgettes, planting out my pumpkins. You know, looking after my sweet peas. Right. So while I'm doing that, I do listen to, and I was listening. And while I was on my hands and knees, scrubbing away, weeding my garden. Anyway, I'm listening to it, and it begins. And this is the bit that took me by surprise. To suddenly say, I think it was obviously a Zoom call.
Yeah.
And then we're talking. So they're setting, there's a bit at the beginning, they're setting it up. And then it suddenly says, Meghan's wearing white, and then suddenly there's a shaft of light descending on Meghan. And then, Sarah turns around and says, well, it looks like I'm being interviewed by an angel. To which that
Angel of
made
death.
me, I wouldn't go that, but I thought, oh my goodness me,
I would
this
go
is,
that far. Prince Philip, Queen Elizabeth,
uh,
Meghan's brought nothing
uh,
good to the royal family.
uh,
Period. Mic drop.
yeah, but anyway, I'm just thinking, oh my God, anyway, then it sort of evolves, and I'm intrigued because actually this lady clearly grafted to get, at one stage, Spanx obviously made a I nearly said it, I nearly swore, a bucket load of money, and quite rightly so, if it was good and it did help women feel comfortable. Anyway, what was quite interesting when she was talking about how it evolved, she was very clear to say, my father was a huge influence, my brother was a huge influence, and for Meghan, it was noticeable she had no ability to add to say, well, I talked to my father. She never mentioned, well, I've used my mother as an absolute rock and just to bounce off ideas. None of that. And that was a telling moment for me, because if you look at Meghan, she's got no family on either side apart from Harry. And what business has he run? Apart from basically being told, he hasn't run a single business in his life because he's in the royal family. And yes, he's a, and so it was very telling. And I thought that left Meghan being a bit exposed. I then was slightly bewildered. I thought, well, if she said she put on 65 pounds of weight during two pregnancies, well, okay, I wasn't going to disagree, but women did come up to me and say, 65 pounds, that's 4.5 stone. And I looked at the pictures, and I'm not going to disagree, or if she did put 65 pounds on, but that's big time. Anyway, so, but then more importantly, I
That's what
did
I
like
like
a
to
story.
call COVID weight when it comes to me. COVID weight, it was 65 pounds. That's my COVID junk in the trunk. But I understand what
Well, okay, well, no, well, I was lucky because I live where I was able to be outside because I don't actually have a house near me, so I could be. I was lucky during COVID, but we're not talking about COVID. But there was one other good story that I actually thought was a good business point, and actually, a good lesson about entrepreneurs is that she's talking about setting up designing these high heels, which took a long time and shows the graft. And we've come back to Meghan doesn't know what she wants and the change of direction. You've got to put the hard yards. And this was really the thing that was coming out in this podcast was that I even heard Christian Louboutin say, what about designing something to be comfortable? To which he supposedly said, my shoes are not designed to be comfortable and they never will be. They're designed for a look. Now, okay, you can't. He's made a bucket.
naturalizers, ladies,
Yeah,
naturalizers.
yeah. Anyway, anyway, naturalizers. I'm going to find out what they are. I have no idea what you're talking about. But anyway, you always leave me slightly confused. But I thought that was,
Go ask
but
your
the
wife.
over.
She'll know. Your wife will know. She's
Well,
probably
okay.
the aisle she avoids at Dillard's.
Well, yeah, probably. it's a bit like there's enough shoes in this house. I don't know why. I never know. I'll just buy another pair of shoes. Why? Anyway, I run mine so they're so in the ground, and but that's I'm obviously too cheap. But anyway, up the point being, there were some interesting nuggets from this lady, but the overriding thing, which was when you tie it against Meghan, all this woman was basically saying, this is hard work,
Mm.
to get something over the line. And it was very much hard work, knockbacks, kickbacks, that the shoes weren't ever going to make the high street, but eventually they did. And that seemed to me the telling difference, because when you hear Meghan now, as ever's not working now, she's now no longer wanting to make jam. There's no direction. And this was the key thing. It's all right, but it highlighted Meghan's lack of purpose, because this woman definitely knew what she wanted, and as a result has been extremely successful, and fair play to her. Well, I'm not sure you agree with me here, Kinsey, do you?
No, I'm taking in what you're saying. The what you heard was the by this woman truly telling her story and laying out her journey, you realized how much they didn't have in common, because Meghan Markle has been handed things to her thanks to Netflix, and given these unique opportunities like her first Spotify podcast, that she totally that it blew up in her face because of a lack of work ethic, because of a lack of clear direction, and because of a lack of ability to collaborate and to listen to other people. Sarah's saying, I'm listening to my father, I'm listening to my brother. I'm sure she had other people that were smarter than she was around her, that were helping her and giving her some guidance. And what we've seen in Meghan's case is she's been given a lot of unique opportunities because she married into the British royal family. Everybody wants one thing and one thing only from these two, and that is to disparage the royal family, to tell secrets. Netflix got that. They got the juice from the squeeze with the first docu-series, Harry and Meghan. It probably remains one of the highest rated docu-series that was produced by Netflix. But everything that they have produced since then has been disappointing analytically. Why they remain with her, I think that they're in the business of all press is good press, and Meghan generates press. But it sounds to me like it was a good conversation, but it just highlighted to you how much these women don't have in common.
Correct. And they can pretend, that maybe they are friends, but in terms of their achievements, Meghan's is basically on the coattails of something else. Her achievements are on the back of
Self-made.
her drive, her decision to go out on a limb and design, something that she thought, and a change of career. Everything was a lesson. No one. Whereas Meghan and Harry think they can just earn money, have an idea, but actually, you've actually got to be an inspiration. You've got to have the same and believe you. It won't just come to you. You have got to put in the hard yards, and
I
that
mean,
was
just
the override.
imagine the world, because this is what happened when they left the royal family. They had multiple companies come to them and say, imagine you can do whatever you want and we'll pay you. That's what the
Yeah.
reality was with Netflix and Spotify. You can do whatever you want, whatever makes you happy, whatever inspires you, and we'll pay you. I think that there were a couple of things going on. I think Harry and Meghan were stuck in a really negative, bitter place. I think they were full of vengeance. And I
Mm.
think that it negatively affected their creativity. I think it's hard to want to be like light and fun when you're so angry at Prince William and King Charles, because you have decided that because you didn't get your way at the end of the day, because they didn't
Yeah.
get their way. And I think it really was detrimental to their creativity. But that the opportunity, companies like Spotify and Netflix approaching you and saying, we're going to give you an ungodly amount of money and you can do whatever you want. 3, 2, 1, go. That is so unrealistic. And the more Meghan continues to show that she lacks this consistency, she can tell us how hardworking she wants to all day long, but her lack of commitment to certain projects or to all projects, I don't know, maybe I'll release new stuff in 2026. That is going to make future corporations hesitant to work with her and to commit to her because she doesn't look like she commits to anything.
And she doesn't know what she wants.
Yeah.
And so why sign up to somebody who will change with the wind?
Mm-hmm.
And therein lies the problem. Because, and this is what seems to be historically the issues with her, she'll say one thing one day, and then next day will say something the polar opposite. And it's very hard to manage that. And if you're running a business, and now the people who've been trying to make the jam and the honey and the other things are suddenly thinking, oh, hello, what are we doing now?
Yeah.
No one wants my jam. Because you now you so you've this is where coming back to this lady, took her 4 years to get the green light with these shoes. She must have, but sounded like she was flying to Italy all the
she'd
time.
proven herself. She'd
Yeah,
proven
yeah,
herself, and it still took her 4 years. She could
yeah,
walk in a room and show people the money she made other people.
yeah,
Like, I created this, and it generated this much money. I've changed all these people lives. Look at all of these
yeah,
investors that I had, and they still said we're going to pass.
yeah.
Whereas
And they
Meghan Markle
pass and saying,
given things.
but the thing is, she was also testing it. They couldn't find it quite right. It didn't. It still was uncomfortable. But the R&D, the hours of testing and driving it with her team was what you needed. But at least her team had a sense of direction. But they knew and what they were trying to achieve. And this is so important because we're waking up every day and thinking, well, 1 minute it's as ever, then it was whatever it was that didn't happen. The
American Riviera
American
Orchard.
Review Orchard, which that was chopped down pretty quickly, and then as ever we think, oh, well, that was coming up, but then she suddenly that didn't work out. I mean, I don't know what she's doing, waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning when she talks.
Goodbye. I'm saying goodbye on my podcast. Just kidding.
Yeah,
Here's another episode with Tina Knowles.
yeah.
I mean, there is no consistency. Nothing she says stands.
But
She
why have they
moves like
produced
the
another
wind.
one? Why? So what's this will just be another loving.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what Beyonce's mother's. I mean,
Oh,
presumably, she's
I'm gonna say something. I'm gonna say something that might get me in trouble. I've never
okay.
seen more hideous clothes than the clothes that Tina Knowles designs. Okay. They're absolutely hideous. I'd rather die in a fire than wear them. But good luck, Meghan Markle. I hope that you enjoyed your conversation with Beyonce's mom.
And was she a designer before her daughter was famous?
No, she dressed her famous daughter, and that's why she's relevant. So they have a lot in common, Meghan Markle and Tina Knowles. Nepotism.
Well, look, nepotism. If it's done right, what's the royal family? Nepotism. The king hands over to you keep it in the family. But I do just think, well, I'll be intrigued. I as I'm. What am I doing this week in the garden? Just
I like to assume
thinning
it's
out.
loads and loads of eggplants.
Well, yeah, aubergines as we call them over here. My wife's gone aubergine crazy this year. I'll be thinning out my radishes amongst other duties. Actually, I've got to go to the Epsom Derby at the end of the week, so but that's where the king might turn up and the queen might turn up. But anyway, that's another story. Back to I will listen to it, but I don't think it'll be as interesting or potentially interesting given the nature of the subject. I just think it will be a little bit fawning because ultimately Meghan would have really loved to have Beyonce. Let's
Oh
be
yeah.
honest.
Oh yeah.
Uh,
And you're one of the 800,000 people that have listened to the podcast. Were you surprised by those numbers in the Fast Company profile? I looked up the company that is the primary advertiser associated with Limonada Media, and their ads on podcasts go from between $25 to $50 for every 1,000 episodes. Or I'm sorry, plays. Realistically, if she just gets the high end and there's not any sort of special pricing for the Duchess, she made approximately $40,000 at the time that we learned about those numbers for season one. That's not Spotify money at all. And if
well,
that
hang on. And these are expensive to produce.
Hmm.
You know,
I know
it's
where I
not,
am.
yeah, okay, here we go. There is a team behind them and they all need, and that's not, given presumably the productions team that are behind that. There's a positive army of people. I would say that that's not, on the face of it, the greatest return to
Can we
their investment.
sure, amen. Before I let you go, what was your reaction when you saw the story over the weekend that Prince Harry approached Earl Spencer one of the last times he was in the UK? I believe it was for the funeral of his uncle, Mr. Fellows. When you heard that Prince Harry had approached his uncle about changing his last name to Spencer, because mine was, will you just not give your mother a rest? These two are so relentless about trying to hijack this woman's legacy, her popularity, her likability, that I just think it's vile. Because
Well,
I
well,
understand he's trying to hurt his family, but at the end of the day, I also think it has to do with trying to align himself with Diana in this war that really doesn't exist anymore against Diana and the royal family. Diana is gone, and most of us have let it go.
well, I think Earl Spencer didn't give it much credence. So I think that's all, and that would be the upshot. If it is true, it smacks of, it's just unnecessary. Unfortunately, he's in the family. He's got no choice. You've made your
Which he
bed.
said himself on the BBC interview.
Yeah,
I'm not going to be able to get
yeah.
out of this family. I can't get out of this family. Well, you're trying.
Yeah, well, no, from you, if you want to get away, then just lead a life, but stop trying to think that you go on and do your thing. But the trouble is, he doesn't know what his thing is. Okay, he nipped over to China, which seemed to me to be one of the a bit brain dead. Or he didn't read the room in that sense, because look, I know I've just been to Shanghai to cover some show jumping, but when you're talking about uh,
Climate change.
you know climate change and sustainable tourism, and you're going to China, ooh, that doesn't strike me as being the greatest
Combo.
understanding of what. And then you're flying from Los Angeles or San Francisco. It's not. I don't know how long the flight is to Shanghai. It's long enough from here, that's for sure. But I'm sure. And then he pops in for one speech, which by all accounts was pretty uninspiring, and off he goes again. So while the king was in Canada trying to upstage his father. All rather uncomfortable. But that just shows at the moment he's not sure what he's about. And even, this coming out about his name, I'm not going to read too much into it. I just think if there's any truth in it, it's a bit sad if he even thought like that. He's got more important things to be worrying about, and that is making sure that he can give his life a sense of purpose. But at the moment, that just looks so far from the truth. And at the moment, his wife's in a bit of a muddle because nothing that she's turning to at the moment is really hitting the spot. And unless anyone can prove me wrong, but at the moment, I think they're both in a bit of a business quandary. I think might be the best way of putting it.
Yeah, I just Meghan made the point in the Netflix With Love Meghan series, episode 2. It's Sussex now. They're
Mm.
clearly trying, their last names are clearly important to them, I guess, because otherwise we wouldn't have heard that. Is she just so sick of being called Meghan Markle that she wants another last name? I mean, there are some people that say she is so desperate to be Diana, which she says she never Googled Prince Harry. Andrew Morton talked to people that gave her a Princess Diana book, knows she read Princess Diana. She fundraised for in Diana's honor after her death. The book was on her shelf. There are some people that say, including Andrew Morton's book about Meghan, that she wants to be the second coming. So Tom Bower's book says
Mm.
something similar.
The point is, she loves the title. And that's why, the quasi HRH, and that's the problem. The being the Duchess of Sussex is all that it's about in the Sussex. Yet she wants to have the title, but she doesn't want anything to do with this country. And that to me is not a good look. If you're going to embrace the title and all that that means, then you must develop a sense of loyalty. Look, there are many Americans who've married dukes and dukes over the years, and come over here. The turn of last century, all those rich bankers' daughters would go and find themselves a duke and then hate the fact that they lived in a freezing cold stately home, and it was legendary, these rich heiresses coming over,
The
to
Buccaneers. The book. It reminds me of the Buccaneers.
yeah, yeah, coming over and marrying Duke, and then being realizing that we even then we didn't have central heating, and places were drafty, and everyone was land rich but cash poor. So so it's not nothing unusual about Americans to come over and marry titled British people. Nothing unusual, but you have to embrace it and accept the foibles that go with it. But okay, you take the biggest one when you marry into the royal family. Well, you should have had the good grace to actually understand that that comes, sadly, at a cost. Well, if you don't want it, then sever your links with it entirely. That would be my lesson. But a strong one.
I
But
don't mind a drafty castle as long as my dogs can sleep in the bed. One of my favorite
oof.
scenes from The Crown, which is not staged, is there's a shot of the Queen Mother towards the end of the series, and there's a mouse that runs across the screen, and they're like, "That is literally just what you
Well,
left here."
well, I'll tell you what, this morning, unfortunately, I've got a cat.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, what did he leave me this morning was a mess by the back door. And
Oh,
poor
oh.
mouse is no more. But there we go.
Well, well,
That
well,
tends to be
well, a moment of silence for that
a,
little rodent.
well, the mouse unfortunately suffered the fate, but in a rural economy, cat has because otherwise, my house would be crawling with the little critters if we didn't have a cat, because there's no
Yeah, that's
shortage.
just the way
There
you
are two a
it
penny.
is.
Yeah,
I want to
just the
ask
way
you
we roll here.
I want to ask you before I let you go about the podcast. Meghan tells Sarah that you should always keep your child's name hidden. Don't ask opinions, blah, blah, blah. I mean, immediately my antenna goes up when I hear that. And I don't think you really did ask the Queen's permission to
Mm.
use the name Lilibet. And then I saw other people interpret it that way as well. Harry and Meghan, when they announced the name, said that they asked the Queen's permission. The palace denied this to the BBC. Harry and Meghan threatened to sue the BBC, didn't sue the BBC. I think it's important to stress these two litigious people absolutely did not sue the BBC. Robert Hardman later reported that they told the Queen that they were naming the child Lilibet. There was no discussion or a back and forth or an ask. To me, Meghan's words there confirmed, in my opinion, what Robert Hardman said, that there really was no request to name, is it all right if we take your childhood nickname and give it to our daughter that you'll never engage with? Did you pick up on that at all while you were listening, or were you too busy in the beats?
The beets aren't ready yet. It's the courgettes, okay. I would say again, as so much of Meghan, it's the old recollections may vary. And
Amen.
this is just another one of those recollections may vary. It's like so many times that sometimes I'm not sure Meghan knows what she said 4 years ago and sort of goes against
It's,
because,
I'm not saying anything, but they do say that pot smoke negatively affects your memory. But I'm not suggesting anything.
well, I wouldn't know.
I wouldn't
My
know
memory.
either. A
Oh, I
homeschool.
would. Well, no. Well, it doesn't matter where you were homeschooled. You can still buy the stuff. But anyway, that's got nothing to do with it. It's a big wide world out there. But anyway, whatever goes on, I just think at times you're never quite sure. And this is when you listen to these podcasts, everyone seems to be, you know, a little something that you go, well, where did that come from? Where did that come from? That seems to contradict that. So there is an awful lot of whatever Meghan says in public, it's in the let's just put it in the recollections may vary category.
Very funny. All right. Agree with us, disagree with us. Let us know in the comments below. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share this video with a friend. Rupert, it's been a thrill.
Well, I'll talk to you after I've been to the Epsom Derby, getting my top hat and tails out next week. And then I believe we might even be going to have a lunch together with the
We are.
cameras.
I'm
We
excited.
are.
Excited. You'll have to
Right.
tell me what to order off the menu since I'm not a
Well,
cooker.
well, I don't. Where we're going, I don't know. It'll be basic, I think, unless they've got a budget that we can. Why aren't we going to a five-star restaurant? But I'll take you to a pub and I'll sup a pint with you, as they say, and look forward to that. But so I'm going to have a busy sporting time. I've got Derby. Obviously, catching up with you, which will be wonderful. Then I've got things like Royal Ascot, which I know you went to last year, correct?
Yes, I did. It was a blast.
But that will no, we probably might get a sighting. We didn't get a sighting last year, but hopefully we might get a sighting. We talked about the Prince of Wales and Princess of Wales at Ascot,
Yeah.
and then a bit of Wimbledon, where I'm sure we'll be seeing the Princess of Wales at least a couple of times during the Wimbledon fortnight. So there we go.
Some
Look
sightings
forward to
to look
catching up.
forward to. All right.
Indeed.
Okay, I look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks so much, Rupert.